G'day legends, I hope that you are having a fantastic day. I hope you've had a great week. At least it's a Friday here in Australia and many people have a long weekend. So I hope you're looking forward to that. Even if you don't have the long weekend, I hope you're looking forward to your weekend. Now, you can probably just see the fatigue on my face maybe. This week, I don't think I've got more than 2 or 3 hours of sleep and I'm sort of in this zone of overtired. So you're just going to have to bear with me for a couple of days so I can get my health back on track. Basically now or within the next hour, I'm getting the results for my functional MRI scan on my brain tumour. I don't know the exact time because I'm happy to just be moved around so other people who are more time critical can fit it in because I work from home. But I'll update you on that either in the comment if I know before this goes live, or I'll just talk about it with you tomorrow. But today, as always, we do have actually a lot to go over, but we have a lot of maps to go over because I missed a video yesterday, or at least a video about Ukraine yesterday, as well as we have the September wrap-up by War Mapper to show the amount of territory that Russia had made during that month, or at least the net change of territory, and that is very interesting and does tell us a bit of a grim picture to do with territorial shift, especially when we look then back through different months. Then we need to look at some footage. I won't be able to show you all of the footage, but we do have a lot of strikes. We have strikes against airfields. We have some decoys, some drones to look at, and we need to talk about war crimes and increased brutality through this war. And that's where I want to start before we just have a look at the maps. So earlier this week, we saw, of course, that footage that came out allegedly showing Russian soldiers executing a number of Ukrainian soldiers through that thermal drone footage. Today we have a video of a gentleman stripped down and then executed. Horrific war crime, no ifs, no buts. We see in this war a new video daily coming out of something like this, whether it is a drone dropped munition on someone who is surrendering or halls to combat, or someone shooting someone like this. It is horrific. It is seemingly daily. And again, what I will say is this is what we see. We likely see the very tip of the iceberg of incidents like this. And I hope that people who carry out these, whether the drone operator or the guy on the trigger or the commander making the decision, I hope that regardless of where they're from, regardless of how the war ends, they are brought to justice. But if you look historically through war, sadly, that is unlikely, especially with the US really undermining the international criminal courts very recently. So I won't show you the footage. You can find it if you'd like, I'm sure. You know where, but this gentleman here, a horrific war crime that has committed. But I want to talk about increased brutality. And these are some reasons that I've put down for increased brutality in protracted war. And historically, in protracted war, remember, if you're not looking into history to then talk about the future, you're making stuff up. If you're not looking back to look forward, if you just go, this will happen, based on what? Anyway, but the reasons for the increased brutality in protracted wars, which you always see. Desensitization. As violence becomes normalized, combatants and civilians alike become more accustomed to brutality. And this is what we do see in protracted war. Something else I've jotted down here on another note is I'll be very interested to see how this war and wars like this affect people just in general, maybe outside of the actual area of operations. Only until very recently have we seen the horrors of war firsthand. Unless you are that guy on the trigger dropping the bomb, you didn't really see this previously. Now you're seeing 4K GoPro footage, 4K drones, this, that, and the rest of it happening like that within minutes, and memes put up and music put over the top. And of course, people celebrating horrific things like happened to that gentleman as well. And we are seeing it en masse as well. It's not 1 or 2 videos. It is just belt fed, for want of a better term, into your feeds. Even if you don't follow this, you will see it. I do wonder how that affects the community, society as a whole. And I do see so much desensitization that there are regular average people online who are thousands of kilometers from the conflict who are completely sadistic when it comes to the other side in this war. Typically, we've seen the desensitization of soldiers or civilians who are getting dropped bombs on, but I think we may see this actually outwardly more so as well. Now, more reasons here is resource scarcity. As resources dwindle, warring parties may resort to increasingly desperate and ruthless measures to gain the upper hand. Remember, this war is going to grow more and more desperate the longer it goes on for one side or the other, as we know that the only way for this to end is a victory for one side, therefore a loss of the other, so therefore there will be a resource scarcity, manpower scarcity at some point. Total warfare doctrine over time. Combatants may adopt strategies that target not just military opponents, but also civilians, infrastructure, and resources to force an end to the conflict. Radicalisation. Prolonged exposure to violence and ideological extremes can make reconciliation seem impossible, leading to more intense and crueler fighting. This is one of those things. People get further radicalised, and reconciliation internally, but also externally, these countries are still going to be neighbours after this, could potentially be impossible. So we will just see. We'll see how things move forward in the future, but I don't have an optimistic outlook at all of this war continuing. It's going to get more bloody and more terrible. Deep State put up something interesting, I thought, about that video the other day here as well. Russians must understand perfectly well that such actions will significantly worsen the situation of their comrades, who will be captured in the coming days. War is a complicated thing, and no one knows whether he will be captured tomorrow. Of course, this is one of these things as well. If you're a soldier on the front line, you've seen that. How are you going to then treat someone if you capture? And we see this all the time. We saw Wagner talk about this. We've seen other groups talk about we're not taking prisoners, this or that. This incident happened, so we're going to treat it like this. And this is one of the problems with things with prisoners like this, is how does it then go down the line for your other side? Does it justify yes, no? No, it doesn't justify actions like that. That's the eye for an eye. But Frontline and a desensitized environment, absolutely that can, of course, happen. Now, we're going to get back to this slide as I've got a lot in here to show you, but I want to show you the maps first because I did miss a couple of days. So look, I want to jump in and I want to show you this graph again as this has been updated. Now remember, this is the changes only within Ukraine's borders. Now, what I've always said was this was slightly hard to tell because we know Deep State is not keeping up with some of the geolocations. They've put it at 410 square kilometres that Russia gained in September. Other mappers have said 650, but Warmapper, who's typically, as you can see by these other numbers, as these numbers say, is far more conservative than Deep State. Well, in September, they have gone about 50 square kilometres more. So it's showing 467 square kilometres gained in September, which is the largest gain this year. Furthermore, it is a very large gain when we look at this. In September, Russian expands control over Ukraine by approximately 467 square kilometres, and the largest monthly gain for Russia since March 2022. So in 2.5 years of war, that's the largest monthly gain. That said, sometimes people do get a bit obsessive over territory, just square kilometre v square kilometre. This is, again, a war of attrition, but also needing to hold fortifications and lines, and with the war of attrition, but also holding territory is important in if there was to be some sort of negotiated settlement, kilometre swap. So it isn't not important, but it is not the be-all and end-all. And some territory is more strategically important than others. Suja in Kursk is not as important as Sevastopol. It just isn't. So K versus K of how hard it is to get is different, and the strategic importance is also different. They also retook control of approximately 126, I'll call it, square kilometres of territory in Kursk Oblast, seized by Ukraine last month. A total Russian gain of 593.6 square kilometres over September. So you can see this here, and the largest gain so far. This is a problem when we see this trend of where this is going. Now, it is going to cool down, but the trend is not only is Russia still gaining, but they are increasing that gain as well. And we did see that in some of the areas where we did see entry into towns or cities, small cities, that didn't appear to have too much damage. Data by the Oblast. Now, this is an important thing to look at if we will talk about where Putin's peace, where he suggested peace, and where the victory plan is suggesting peace, if we're talking purely territory. You can see the amount here that I've highlighted in Donetsk is 61% that Russia occupy, 98.5% in Luhansk, Kharkiv. Don't worry, because that wasn't ever said by Putin as an area that he wants to take. 72.1% in Zap, 71.8% in Kherson, and of course 100% of Crimea. So you can see where, if Putin's here, Zelensky's here on territory alone, Russia's more like here as far as actually the occupation of those oblasts that they would like to walk away with. Now, Ukrainian control of Kursk. So you can see the high point here was then at 2.84% control of Kursk on September the 6th, and it has then slipped down since we've seen more Russian offensive pushes into here as well. So you can see where that has increased somewhere, decreased in others as operations continue all up and down then the front line. So where do we want to go next? Let's then have a look. Let's actually go into Kursk just for a quick look. So this map, look, I'm just not going to use it. It does show then some change in then grey zone and a reduction in Ukrainian control in here. But this deep state map, it's just so hard to labeling because it doesn't show day-to-day movements. It doesn't show where movements were at one point. Difficult. But let's actually have a look at this. And there is a important strike that I want to discuss. So, of course, we've seen then this other frontline push out near Vasyole as well. Now, the Russian army managed to recapture Vasyole and re-entered Ulbakovka that sits just to the south there in Sudzha. Russian forces entered then these localities further, if we scroll out, on the north up in this direction. Of course, none of the maps are very good labeling to scroll through day to day, but what we do see by what we looked at by Warmapper and then the maps is that Russia is at least grinding back slowly some of the ground in here, but we're going to talk about that and strategic traps laid as well for in Sudzha. In Kursk. So I was reading it off the screen. But something which we didn't really see used that much in the beginning was things like FABs in Kursk. Of course, FABs, large bombs, 250 kilos to 3,000. They're a very, very large bomb. Massive amounts of damage to infrastructure. And what I was seeing and reading was that they're not wanting to drop those because of the damage to infrastructure that they are going to have to then rebuild. Well, that has shifted because obviously they couldn't push out Ukraine in some areas. So now they are dropping a lot of these sort of glide munitions, bigger ones, knowing there's going to be a lot of collateral damage for these. But to then dislocate the forces, they have to have resorted to this. And we have seen today FAB 3000, so the 3-ton variant. You can see the shockwave coming off there in Kursk. I don't have a geolocation for you, but it's said to be in Kursk. And you can see then the orange smoke here coming up, which typically means that something like fertilizer has been hit, some sort of ammonium potentially too, which can be very dangerous down the line also. So, of course, large increase in targeting here. Now, let's have a look on deep state. Let's have a look where things have changed. I've already got it on to show us where the red check is, where there has been change. I don't even know if I showed you around the map. We've done it a million times. You know where we are. If you don't know where we are, you're 15 minutes into a video and you don't know what's going on. Anyway, let's have a look around then Pokrovsk front and let's have a look at what is changing. So what you can see first off the bat here is that there is then red check, new ground that Russia has made in 24 hours into Tskerne here, into then the southern blocks as well as on the eastern side. Remember, a lot of other maps have showed a lot of Tskerne has had Russian occupation for now some time. But it tells a bit of a different story when you do this because you can see the increase of grey zone around these areas too, of course, up to this train line and then around to the east of Hernik as well. So let's have a look and see where the Syriac map is showing different. This red dot here, this is Seladov. What we can see is just above Seladov, that in here, that it's saying that Russia has taken back some of this, as well as territory in the direction of Lysivkia, but not too significantly different. But around then, to Tskerne, you can see far more of a push up through, see where this road comes out? So through Tuskerne, up to where then the train line is, showing a very, very different picture. Russian forces took control over half of the locality of Tuskerne. So, of course, you've got this other half across on the western side of the train line. So, definitely paints a different image that we are seeing there. Now, we have another update here as well for this Kursk front line. So, let's have a look here. We can get, this is a better look at where Tuskerne is, but also showing in this red dot is Hernik, and a further push down then this road towards this Novoselidivka as well out to the south, which these two maps are showing actually fairly similar when we consider where those movements are. Now, there's another change just down in Hostay here. We can see that there is some definite grey zone shift in and around this area. Now, we look on then Noel reports, Ukrainian source here. He is showing that there is Russian control almost all the way out to Ostrevsky as well, right out in here. This map isn't showing, but it showed that their grey zone did increase out towards that direction. Suryak today, which is more on par with Noel reports, does show that Hostay is under Russian occupation and that there is a push right out to Ostrevsky as well. That last week, Ukrainian army began the withdrawal from southern hills of Hostay, which were taken by Russian army at the beginning of this week. During the first days of October, Russian forces advanced along the railway west of this locality and managed to enter Ostrevsky, the last village before the stronghold of Kursk. As a result, Ukrainian forces withdrew to the northern shore of the Volga River, with the exception of the Terekan south. So pushing over this river out to the north too. And of course, Kursk, the major area sitting in here, the last area then before this, but a hell of a lot of open ground as well. Wait and see how this pans out in this direction, but significant advances when we take into consideration the amount of net change of ground that has been made over the past few years. So let's then talk about Vuhledar. So we'll come down in here, have a look, and I've got some writing I want to go through as well and some video footage in here. So you can see then the red check out from Konstantinivka, pushing up then along to the south of Katanivka as well. Of course, Vuhledar came under control then a few days ago. Now, there are more strikes today, and this is an interesting one. So where we can have a look is it is just here where this mine is, and I'll show you the footage, and that Russia is dropping then fabs on this and destroying one of these mines as well. Remember, these mines are very important to coal, of course, a major industry in Ukraine. Let's have a look at where these maps then line up. We zoom out one and we see this same ground to the south of Katanivka being made in here. So, yep, bang on, as well as this movement down here, which is showing right around that mine of where I then showed you that being destroyed by those fabs. But let's talk about Vuhledar in a second, and this is an interesting bit taken out by one of the brigade commanders here as well. Before the brigade was redeployed to Donetsk region, we had a fully operational unit and staff, but over 2 years of fighting without rotations and rest, we turned into an incapacitated unit. The brigade was wiped out. In the 2 years since we had been in the Vuhledar area, only once in my battalion have we been able to fully staff one company. In the entire battalion, every 3 months we received 25 new recruits, mostly old men aged 50 plus. They were poorly trained in the brigade training schools. They did not know tactical medicine at all, nor did they know what a grenade launcher was, and they had zero fire support. When asked why they had failed to hold the town, which was situated on a hill and in a very favourable position for defence, the brigade and other units had held for 2 years, Victor explains, and what is a dominant height now? If the enemy's reconnaissance drone are hovering over you around the clock, and that they had practically no artillery. It does discuss here that the Russians have a superior number of FPV drones as well, and that they are remotely mining access roads to these areas. He says the infantry are bums, but they have an advantage in means of numbers. We simply had no one and nothing left to fight with. And this is going to show you the next thing that I want to show you in this is we have seeing some more footage like this. This is a Russian soldier here putting PFM-1 then landmines, typically known as a petal mine, on an FPV drone. Of course, fly these back, drop the mines, and massive area denial. Of course, problem with mines is probably end up going through them yourself at some point. Victor tells us how many men he has left in his battalion. Of 350 people, there are up to 30 left for one platoon. This includes mechanics, drivers, and recently infantrymen who held the front line. In the 2 to 3 kilometre strip, there were 14 to 18 people in the unit. We have repeatedly said that the unit is incapable of fighting. We were sometimes given some manpower, but they were also quickly worn out due to the inadequate tasks such as restoring lost positions. So being able to defend an area, which it sounds like they were incapable of doing anyway, and he has shown this, that has fallen, but going on offensive is much, much, much more difficult than just defensive works. When asked whether the Russian offensive on Vuhledar could have been deterred in recent months, Victor replies, yes, if we had been replaced at least 2 or 3 months ago. But it depends on who and what quality of infantry would have been there. So this manpower problem continues for Ukraine, and I do not know how they are going to swing this back around, but I'm going to talk about manpower tomorrow then at length as well. So we do have a couple more updates for you down in here, the area where I will open a beer once this updates. We have Robotny. Of course, this area in here hasn't been changing for some time. You can see by then Siversk today, this part of green zone here, he is saying has come under control, as well as the entirety basically of Robotny for a number of months at this point, backed up with a lot of geolocated footage and other maps too, but being ignored in that sector. I've had a guy said to me that October may actually be a larger percentage gain. Again, it may actually be less than September, but some of these maps have to maybe show some gains. They're going to have to show it over this month. Therefore, it may actually swing and show that October is a bigger month again, skewing how this will look, if that makes further sense. Now, come up into Toretsk, and you can see just a small advancement into the central localities here. Again, not showing some of the movement around near Nepelivkia, although I know there's a lot of attacks and armoured assaults happening around this front line area at the moment. So let's have a look in here. Again, Siversk showing in basically the same locality, movement here, but around through Nepelivkia and around Leonidivkia, of course, significantly different. This Petrivkia is up here, that he's showing way out through in these areas that where the Russian forces are. Again, wait and see, and we'll see what occurs and changes down the line. Now, we have one more update on this map before I will show you something else. That Russian forces out to the west of Pashane have been moving closer and closer to the Oskil River. This does pose a problem. Let's say that they are 2.5 kilometers away now, and over the past 24 made then 1 kilometer. If they get to the Oskil River, a lot of the defenses in here get split into a north and south element, making it easier for attacks on Kupiansk or the close-up of areas like Berestove, Losovka, and Rivka, where we know, at least some maps are showing that there's a lot of changes in here not shown by this map. That is an area to keep an eye on. Now that's just in Nevsky, just a red line, maybe a movement there. This in Pashani is also backed up by Syriac, but he's showing it's far further to the west than Deep States is showing, and actually a lot fatter in here as well, but we will wait and see. Now, let's come down into Makivka. Now, one of the big changes that a lot of maps are saying is Makivka to Nevsky is like this, and this area has been taken. Again, if this has occurred and this has to come up over over October, that will skew those kilometer gains squares, square kilometer gains over this month. Let's have a look then here. Now, what he's showing, so we're looking at just Makivka here. In the last 2 days, Russian army expanded buffer zone around Makivka, taking control of the western hills. So again, it's not easy to see, but you can see the red dot in here, and where this is said road. You can see this funny shaped paddock that it's showing. It's right out where my cursor is, somewhere around here. Around here by then the Deep State map. Now there is a very interesting update in here. We need to come down Siversk front. This is an area where I've seen even the Russian command talk about how good the Ukrainian defense is in and around Siversk. The actual changes we've seen in here over the course of the war since that initial sort of push in 2022, very, very limited realistically in here. This is thanks to the command, but also a lot of these then Kremenar forest area around here, where Russia doesn't have such an advantage due to the close terrain as well. So we need to have a look at this. Now, what we are looking for is this Verkhonhokhoz Mayansky. It's not pronounced correctly at all. But since the beginning of October, Russian army resumed operations east of Siversk from north of Sperny and west of here, Russian forces managed to seize a number of positions in these oblasts, including the trench system here, which allowed troops to enter the locality for the first time since 2022. Currently fighting, the Ukrainian army is taking place in the centre of there and the northern White Hill. So he's showing in here that, let's have a look, see where this road cuts down. It's got this right angle. This is the said right angle. That this area in here, including down to the south, has been taken by Russian forces first time since 2022. Again, wait and see. But any movement in here is significant due to how stable this front has actually been for the Ukrainian forces. Today, the Russian MOD declared the capture of the locality. Remember, it's the Russian MOD saying it, grain of salt. If true, it would mean for the first time since September in 2022, a symptom of deep weakening of the Ukrainian army's positions of the Siversk front. We have to take into account that this is one of the best defended fronts of Donbass, where they command efficient members of the Ukrainian armed forces capable of having stopped countless Russian attacks. However, the general aggravation of the Ukrainian forces is finally having repercussions on this front, taking into Luhansk front, where the pace of advance by the Russian army has accelerated. At the moment, it was not possible to receive information from this front. It should be noted that the Russian forces advanced north of Spurne and west of here, but the state of the trench system in this direction, which is indispensable for the capture here, is still unknown. Similar situation occurred in the statements of the Russian MOD, capture of Belorivka, the Shani, where the fighting is still going on. The map will be updated as soon as the information is received. So he's not showing that it's captured, but at least putting, just telling you, hey, this is what has occurred. Now, not yesterday, day before, that fighter bomber confirmed that a pilot of a Su-25 had been killed, we presume, in the downing of a Su-25. Now, this is interesting too. Ukrainian Legion launches first volunteer recruitment centre in Poland. Now, this is for Ukrainian men living in Poland who are trained by the Polish Armed Forces. Now, up until only a few weeks ago, we believed that there was already thousands of guys who had been trained or were in training, had already signed up in part with this. And then history legends broke and like, no, this hasn't even begun. So apparently this has started now. My question is, though, why would someone who is illegally outside of the country, so just a male 18 to 60, why would then they sign up to do this, to then return to fight and can't leave if they want to as well? Because that's been possible all along. Now, I know they may receive better training and conditions in Poland, but still, you're still going to go to the front line and then not be able to then leave. And if you are out of the country illegally, I would be interested to see the treatment as well, maybe upon return. So I don't know how successful this will be, but apparently the recruitment centre is open. Now, let's have a quick look at this. We see then Ukraine with either phosphorus or either thermite or white phos on a FPV drone here, flying into said to be a Russian pillbox, burning this out here. Now, with any incendiary munitions, where it comes to do with war crimes, legalities, to be honest, for this war, with drones, that whole thing has just been thrown out the fucking window regardless. But it's very actually difficult with incendiary munitions where the line is legally or not, with marking targets and residential areas and this and that. But again, a horrible weapon system, but we've seen the Russians using then that drone sort of flamethrower thing as well. So obviously very effective. I honestly think we could see man-packed fucking flamethrowers come back in at some point. Now, this isn't anything new. We've reported on it before, but there are increased videos of Ukrainian drones attacking Zala Russian drones here and then taking them out, drone-on-drone warfare. What we have seen a lot of is then these having some sort of camouflage on them, and I've seen some with some sort of disruption camo as well. Now, people are saying that this is then a war crime here with this symbol. So this symbol, the triangle, we have seen Russians use a very similar with the V. We've seen the triangle, that is Ukraine's markings for the Kursk operation. Now, in the law, as far as my reading, is that national emblems is forbidden, but the triangle is not seen as like a verified national emblem or uniform. But like I've said here, is Russia going to care? On the scale of war crimes we see occurring daily, having a symbol on a drone in the air is vastly different to what we are seeing no one have accountability for. You can see the Ukrainian drone here about to take this out, and I think we will see more and more of these in camouflage as well. Now, this airfield in the Vrozhe region as well in Russia, the Boris Globezk can't pronounce it, has been attacked by Ukrainian drones overnight as well, but it is unclear if there is any damage. You can see this was from previously, and then you can see then further fires today. Again, it's not clear enough to actually have any idea of how much damage will occurred. And then this was interesting too. So there's like a made up dummy here in a Russian uniform holding then a mortar and a box of mortars. These are probably just fake mock-ups. All ammo is bloody cheap anyway. And that this is not real. This is just a decoy guy holding this, but you could see how easily you could then put a drone munition into this, working as a decoy on a smaller level, similar to the decoys of HIMARS or other systems we've seen, but now like fake dudes on the ground in camouflage as well for the targeting. So that'll be very interesting to see how that comes out over the next coming months, years, or however long this war is going to have. Legends, I am smoked, but have a great day. Have a great weekend, and I will maybe speak to you tomorrow. I need to have a bit of a break at some point. Okay, look after yourselves. Bye-bye.